What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut album by English rock singer Billy Idol. Basically this project is called Self-Titled and it came out in the summer of 1982. So the thing about this particular project is just the fact that Billy Idol, I remember this, I do at least remember, I've heard a number of times on like alternative rock radio pitches like that, vintage classic rock radio, some of those type fairs, White Wedding. Haven't as commonly heard like the lead single Hot in the City, but that is another nice bop on here. I wanted to see like the particular home project like that, the hits on White Wedding as far as that particular kind of goes, just to see if there were other hits on there. And this is a good album. Definitely has some of that 80s kind of seediness, gleam as far as those pitches kind of happen. That typical kind of pizzazz, like the sheens of just like the neon type fare and that sludge as far as that particular pitch kind of goes. But I look after it in terms of like another kind of sleek type song that just overall has the emphatic typeness of like White Wedding. It's not like it doesn't full blown have it, but it's just kind of within the pitch that there's just not a replica of that particular song like I thought there might have would been. But there are some songs on here. This is very much an album that's on the go as far as those pitch kind of happen. It does not really as much full blown have like a nightclub song. I feel like Hot in the City is at least like some good kind of out and about type. Like Hot in the City is at least like some good out and about type Travers. So just like the relief of just got done with work shift, hair in the wind, some of that type fare as far as that would particularly kind of happen. But I mean, I do sense like the Miami kind of sunshine, even though he's like from like possibly England or just from Europe as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just the kind of beach type fanfare as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just more warmer weather, some of that typeness, just within that 80s gloss. But I look after it. I mean, yeah, this is a pretty balanced. I'm talking like I'm not gonna get like out of the 9. There's 10 songs on this particular album, but minus like the Spotify edition has a song Congo Man on here, which is only like 52 seconds, which is not really a song. So out of 9 songs, I wound up recommending 6.5. So it's just kind of within the fare behind it. There's definitely a good assortment of moments on here to have within the context behind it. So I just look after within the tone. It's definitely an 80s album just within the pitch behind it. I do like the aspect of being able to see some of these types of moments. But yeah, in terms of like a dance kind of festivity, I feel like White Wedding is probably the most heralded type song with a little bit of Hot in the City. That's definitely like the good entry type one, the initial dap, but just some kickbacks, some of that type fare, just kind of getting towards like the aspect of just like the relative unwind. But this is actually, I feel like this project, the primary concept about this is just kind of romping, just getting tasks done, standard disc day fare as far as those pitches can happen. There is some 80s sheens of ones on here. Like I do feel like Nobody's Business, Hot in the City, and like at least one other one, which I would say like Hole in the Wall. Some of these type ones do have some of that kind of 80s neon to kind of get about it. But yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about this album here. The lead single is Hot in the City. This is a good pitch. It's like a woozy kind of 80s gleam and neon kind of sauntering kind of get here. Just a great surf around and kind of like some great surf around in like pastel suit, those typical 80s fashions. Just pitches like that, just looking snazzy, some of that type fare. Is a feel good after work as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. Just after task, some of that type fare. Just a great unwind for like 4:30 to about 6:30 p.m. Some of that type fare. Just initially going to hit up the dance club, get some crank back as far as that pitch kind of happens, just figure out what's going to happen, have like a nice fruity drink, something that relative type fare, something just to feel good and just kind of have some pizzazz about it. Just the initial, I mean, I definitely feel like this is a very underappreciated song. I just would have to say, I just look after within the tone behind it. I don't know how commonly I particularly hear this song on like, you know, standard rock radio for the most part. It's not to say that Billy Idol doesn't have other hits. I don't know many songs by Billy Idol apart from White Wedding, but I would have to say I just look after the tone that one continues to be a standout. It's kind of like Ozzy Osbourne's Iron Man and like Crazy Train, some of those type ones, just a classic out of the 80s. I want to see if the rest of this album kind of had moments like that, but it would be nice to kind of hear Hot in the City more. It's just kind of like Mr. Crowley, some of those type pitches that you just don't super commonly hear, like the other single off those particular type albums from back in the 80s. For the most part, it just has like those signature type ones. But yeah, Hot in the City at least has 40 million plays on Spotify, so it seems like a number of folks, at least within a relative sense, remember this song. But yeah, I do like the boppishness. I feel like this is a great 1-2 puncher. I feel like it delivers upon what it's supposed to do, where White Wedding is just kind of more Traverse malaise, just within the pitch, just like just groovy kind of sunglasses, kind of like Oakley's type music, some of that type fare, just not necessarily mean mug type music, but just kind of more mug and just kind of stone face looking slick type tone as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's cold as ice, but I look after Hot in the City is just a little bit more of like a groovy type one, just feel good and like that 80s kind of neon, just sludge as far as those pitches kind of happen. So it just has that appeal about it. Just after work shift, just kind of loosen up and have some good times. But White Wedding is the second single, and this one's a little bit more signature. It's like a classic kind of malazed and simmering kind of Traverse song to kind of get here. Definitely a signature type one out of the mid 80s and just 80s in general. This is a song that if you listen hard enough on like classic rock radio, you can probably find the song played within a relative distinction, I'd have to say. Definitely very catchy, distinct, durable. Some of those type pitches about the particular song. Continues to have affability just within the tone behind it. There's definitely some good 80s sludge kind of get here. Very hooky, just like the appeal behind it. Real nice one, nice bop to kind of get within that tone. It really is almost like, it's not a full-blown crime because there is some good bops on this particular album, but it is almost like a full-blown crime just within the aspect of just talking about the fact that there was not some degree of like a carbon copy of this particular song. I feel like the emphaticness behind it is just kind of a more overcast or almost rainy day. Just kind of, once again, the slick factor about this particular song is just a little bit strengthier compared to the rest of the album. I just feel like the relative just kind of stone-faced, just kind of icebox cool, kind of stone face, kind of icebox cool type tone of this particular song was just not replicated within that particular fashion. This is like the most stunt heavy type one to kind of get within a typical type fashion. But it's not to say that this album doesn't have other bops on here, but for the most part, this particular mood of this song and overall delivery and this aspect of like the aesthetic behind it does not have anything else on here within that time. I think another good post-grunge-esque kind of sleaze. I mean, post-grunge wasn't around in the 80s, but just something like that relative kind of post-grunge, something like that relative kind of post-grunge like sludge of this particular song was probably needed, something like that. Maybe Billy Idol did it on later albums, I'd say, but this is kind of the concept. So once again, there's 9 songs on this particular album. There's a reissue that I'm surprised was not on Spotify as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's the song Dancing With Myself, which was actually Billy Idol's debut single. Kind of get him tied up with Billie Eilish as far as those pitches kind of happen. I know in more recent times people would think when I say Billy Idol, they think I'm talking about Billie Eilish, but Billy Idol just within the pitch. Dancing With Myself was the single that was supposedly on one of his EPs. Too bad it's not on this particular album because it would be nice to have 3 singles kind of talk about on here just within the time. Maybe that one has some good appeal about it, but maybe eventually I'll review that EP just within the time. I mean, I do want to review it, but just within the tone. But yeah, out of 9 songs out of here, like I was saying, I recommended 6.5. So the only 2.5 songs I don't recommend would just be Love Calling, and the only 2 songs I don't recommend would just be Nobody's Business and Love Calling, and then the almost song is Come On, Come On. So just talk about Come On, Come On. This is basically like a city hop kind of summer surf around antics kind of get here. Just gas station run kind of goodies, typical day like Dead on Arrival, some of those type fares. Just would have to say. The reason why it's an almost song is because I kind of feel like I like the bridge to like the chorus on this particular song, but when it just gets to saying like Come On, Come On in the chorus, it just, for some reason, this is not quite as affable of like one compared to some of these other hooks on here. I feel like the draw behind this particular song is just not as full-blown kind of kinetic just within the tone behind it, but I do think for the most part the melodies on this song are a lot better. Just kind of the more drone-like chorus is just not as good on that one. But I look after it. So to talk about the 2 songs I don't recommend on here, which basically Nobody's Business was just kind of like, there's some songs on here, like I was saying, with this album being more mainly on the go, more so than kind of nightclub kind of pizzazz. I kind of feel like there's 2 songs, Come On, Come On, and then Dead on Arrival, which are more kind of summer, which are kind of more summer activities just within the pitch behind it. But then like Nobody's Business is kind of one that's just kind of that same summer type romp within a more night type fare, as you're kind of still amidst maybe somewhat of the worship, but just kind of getting towards like the commerce of maybe slightly still amongst the worship, but just the last few moments before getting to songs like Hot in the City, and like getting to songs like Hot in the City and Hole in the Wall, some of those type pitches I'd have to say, but just didn't really pull out the appeal nearly as well within that particular tone. It was just kind of, I mean, I feel like the romping type appeal just didn't really suit like the night type commerce as far as that typical kind of got to get stuff done, a little bit more bustle about it. Just didn't make sense to have like a night song where you'd be more in unwind type mode to kind of have that night bustle. I mean, if you just woke up in the night shift and you're just getting some night you're just getting some night errands done as far as those pitches kind of happen, where you woke up 7:30 p.m., some of those type fares, just getting some of that type of stuff done, but I just didn't see the appeal as much full-blown about it. Then Love Calling was just kind of a club type song, or a kind of almost tribal type song, but I didn't really appreciate the pitch of this particular song here. Just kind of one that I felt like was probably the most clumsy song off this particular product. Was just the one that just had the most kind of social kind of commotion and like a more kind of just festivity type sense, but it just did not feel like a dance club or some sort of normal kind of commotion. It was just kind of a little bit more of one that felt like some sort of like tropical type picnic, something like that, just within the tone. It just was not quite as affable within the tones. It was kind of one that was just more of it like an awkward type one. Didn't appreciate that one, but every other song on here was pretty full blown awesome just within the pitch. So talk about some more of these, like Dead on Arrival's a real nice one. It's like a summer kind of out on the town commerce. I'd have to say, good concept for that. Just feeling fine, kind of drive through music pitches like that, get some goodies, snacks, basic kind of errands and vanilla day type tone kind of get here. This one goes pretty well with Come On, Come On. This is just the more affable type one I'd have to say within the tone. I mean, they basically have like dead similar type riffage, and like the way that these song compositions are kind of are is just within the tone that I feel like this one just has a little bit more affability towards it. But the summer romping tunes work within the pitch behind them as far as they would particularly going to go. Hole in the Wall is a nice one. It's like an emphatic kind of after work shift romp around to kind of get here. Just a nice groove and pep about this particular one I'd have to say, and this goes great with Hot in the City. So it's just, I do appreciate like the gleamy kind of just overall, this sludgy type feel of like Hole in the Wall and Hot in the City. Just some real nice ones for just like that groove of just having some good kind of 80s sludge just within the appeal behind it. I mean, these are just some nice ones for like that slag of just the way it feels after, you know, between 3:30 sunset type of appeals, 3:30 about 6:15, some of those type fares. Is like the commerce to some of that typeness, just emphatic type feels. There's really not as much of like work shift on here, I'd have to say. I look after the commerce, a lot of this is just kind of more congratulative in the sense of just like, okay, day is done, but not so much amidst like the work's day. It's not like that's a problem. I just look at it as just within the pitch that this feels more of like a conduit type project, just kind of more getting you from here to there within the pitch. I mean, for the most part, that's kind of the more transit type tones as far as like a lot of these. Like every single song on here has like the more fashion of disc. It's not so much like house party and kind of more nightclub, dance club, some of those type moments, just more around the house, just more chit chat type in between type moments. A lot of this is pretty just within the tone of just like commerce as far as that kind of goes, but I do like these tones just within it. Some of these are more goodies type runs, just getting gas, getting some fuel pitches like that, some of those type tones, and standard errands kind of day and just, you know, relief, but kind of happens to be a thing. So another one nice on here is Shooting Stars. Is like a primer for some evening excitement. Shooting Stars is like a primer for some evening excitement. I'd have to say, just out on the prowl in like the later hours, I definitely would have to feel like, and just some good demon time commotion kind of get here. I just would look within the tone behind it. So this one's just a little bit more of like a glimmer, just within the tone of like, yeah, Shooting Stars is just a primer for some evening excitement. I just would have to say, just a good concept of that. Just kind of a little bit more uppity compared to like the more emphatic and just kind of malaise, kind of sluggish type draw of Hole in the Wall and Hot in the City. It's just kind of probably more in between, whereas Shooting Stars has the same sort of emphasis as Hole in the Wall and Hot in the City, but both of those songs are just a little bit more sluggish just within the tone behind it. I kind of feel like this one's just a little bit more uppity and just kind of a good primer for like, okay, there's just the bustle of getting ready to have some good times just within the pitch as far as that particular one happens. Just a little bit more in motion. I mean, the other ones are just more emphatic, kind of sluggishness, just within the tones, Hole in the Wall and Hot in the City, but this particular one has a little bit more of just like, kind of, I'm ready to start hopping to it as far as those pitches kind of go. And then It's So Cruel is a nice one, as well as like a romantic kind of 80s neon gauze kind of get here, just a basic kind of slow dance and simmer down type draw to kind of have about this one, just a mellow kind of cruise out to kind of have here. So just kind of the song is definitely like tunnel of love type music, just within the tone, this real romantic emphasis just within the tone behind it. It's a little bit more eye gazing pitches like that just within the tone behind it. You just would have to look after like the emphaticness of dislikes and good kind of sludgy, just kind of pink skies kind of kick back, this good rousiness about this particular song. So a little bit, this is like one of the few songs off this particular project that's a little bit more slowed down. It's kind of not so much in motion, or kind of not so much claustral that this album is, but just kind of more uppity within a sense that just kind of has like the aspect of just having like some standard kind of draw and pep, and just kind of more this commute just within mind, just within tone, just a little bit more on the go, I'd say. But this particular song is just more of like, if White Wedding is like the aspect of this amidst like the club and like a more standard type draw, I feel like It's So Cruel is just more of a song with like a soft spot, some of those type tones, and just like the after moments of just probably Probably if it were to be played in like a dance club, just more 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and just final moments there as far as those pitches gonna have just some nice good pitches for that. It's like the tone behind us. That's just the tone as far as those pitches gonna go. So yeah, me recommending 6.5 out of 9 songs in here. I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 7.75 out of 10. I feel like the emphasis behind it, like I said, I feel like the definite draw about this project. I do like the snappiness of it just within the tone. I do think the emphasis of a lot of these songs works pretty well, but I do think another song like White Wedding would have been really brilliant to have gotten that. Hot in the City is a definite nice one. There is at least replicas of that song with Hole in the Wall, and to a lesser extent kind of Shooting Stars, but I just look after just being able to say just kind of, I just feel like the edge factor of a song like White Wedding, that, I mean, just, I don't know if Billy Idol would have been able to know that that song was going to be such a smash hit back at the time when he made the song, but this is kind of the concept of just saying that it's pretty much like the highlight to kind of stand out on here. But I do think Hot in the City is like a great follow up. It's kind of underrated nowadays. I feel like the for the most part the capital type concern of this album probably is White Wedding, but I think Hot in the City definitely needs more attention. It's a great feel good kind of unwind, like some 80s kind of Miami Vice type sludge kind of get, but it's just kind of within the tone. Just I think they needed another post grunge kind of like simmering, just kind of like haze type one to kind of get within that, just like White Wedding. But it's just for the most part it works. So just kind of the concept, like I said, like Nobody's Business is just kind of like a summer kind of romp antics, just in a more night type sense for more 7 o'clock p.m. forward, but it just didn't have as much catchiness within the tone behind it. And then Love Calling was just kind of an awkward kind of relative festivity one that just didn't make sense. That's just kind of within the tone. But I just look after it. So 7.75. The social score, that's kind of tricky. I think I'll give this social score. I'm going to give this social score like a 7 because I feel like there's some good moments on here. I do feel like Hot in the City, Hole in the Wall are some great emphatic type ones to have within a relative sense, but this is really not so much like a full blown kind of festive type project that I had to say, apart from White Wedding and possibly, I mean, for ladies in mind, I'd say It's So Cruel is a definite nice one. Those are like the 2 biggest ones. Hot in the, probably 3 biggest ones: White Wedding, Hot in the City, and It's So Cruel. But for the most part, not terrible many songs for homies and just more festive kind of smoke up. Not terribly many songs for smoke up kind of dance pitches like that. Some kickback, just vehicle knocks, and those type ones are just a great type of just social pizzazz and pitches like that. I had to say it was just within the tone. I still give it a relatively high score because some of these bops on here are some good commerce type ones. If you got errands to do and you're more in motion, and a lot of y'all are just going out and about, just getting some stuff done today, it's a very productive type product, just to be able to say that. So yeah, I look after it. So in terms of the future, I'm not really sure as much full blown what Billy Idol's been up to. I mean, he was a product of like probably even the 70s, as far as those pitch kind of happened in the 70s, the 80s, some of those type fairs. I don't know as to like the most recent things he's done. This is one of his signature albums. I'd say just some excellent type pitches kind of get that. Definitely excellent type fare. And the 2 singles are definitely brilliant and spot on within those tones. Definitely some 80s sludge going to get here, and I do recommend a lot of this, despite the fact that its social aspects may be a little bit more dimmer just within the tone. But definitely is some good sludgy type spark to kind of have with a lot of these.